A vision without funding is an hallucination, but a vision without safety and lower emissions attached to the funding is also ultimately an illusion.
Hi, I'm Christian Milneal. I'm the editor of StreetsblogMASS, Massachusetts.
And I'm Megan Volsey, and I'm a reporter for StreetsblogMASS, Massachusetts.
And we're here in Malden Center this morning. Malden is Senator Ed Markey's hometown and Megan's hometown, right?
Yeah.
We're here to meet the senator, and we're going to take a bus ride with him on the 104 and talk about what's going on with transportation policy in Washington, D.C. right now.
Let's do it.
Senator, thank you so much for meeting us out here in your hometown, Malden.
Thanks for coming out to Malden.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful day here. Just to set the table, you serve on the Environmental and Public Works Committee as well as the Commerce Committee.
That's right.
Can you tell us a little bit, or tell our readers about how those two committees specifically influence transportation policy at the federal level?
There is a division of responsibilities, but the Commerce Committee would be responsible for rail. And obviously, I'm here in Malden, and that's a subject that is of great interest to me, which is why I have my All Aboard Act to spend $200 billion on rail in our country. And then over on the Environment and Public Works Committee, that deals with kind of the issues that are of great concern to me, making sure that the transportation projects that we build have lower emissions, have lower costs for people, that we can have complete streets that ensure that bikers and pedestrians are equally protected, treated, and encouraged as are people who are in their automobiles. But you have to make an ongoing campaign out of explaining to other members of Congress that may not come from this kind of a setting that funding is not only what's needed, but it's what the community wants.
Yeah. Well, that's a great introduction. You covered a few things that I want to talk more about when we get on the bus, but I think our bus is about to get here, so let's go hop on.
Let's go.
So we made it on the bus. We're on the 104. We're heading towards Chelsea, and I understand this is not just a photo op for you, Senator. We are actually on our way to your next event at Greeners, correct?
Yeah, we're going over to an event in Chelsea with Green Roots, which is the community-based environmental movement that not only is a model for Massachusetts, but for the whole country.
Our transportation policy at the federal level is still overwhelmingly oriented towards roads and highways. Our transportation bills are basically highway funding bills right now. So I'm curious, why don't Democrats in Washington try harder to integrate climate policy in these transportation bill reauthorizations?
I agree with you. Democrats have to try harder. They have to work harder. They have to fight harder. It's a transition that we have to make. It doesn't happen by accident. You have to have people who are willing to put themselves on the line, because that's what the communities want. They don't want more highways. They want more affordable public transportation, safer roads, safer ways in which they can be riding their bikes. So all of that should be a part of the agenda of the Democratic Party. And next year, after the blue wave hits this November, that has to be the agenda in all of the transportation committees.
Our current infrastructure law is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which passed back in 2021 with the Biden administration, also known as the bipartisan infrastructure law. We're in a situation now where that law created a lot of good funding programs, but the Trump administration is basically choosing not to spend that money. So for one example, the big Federal Transit Administration grant program, the capital investment grants that fund new subway lines and new bus lanes around the country, that hasn't given out any funding during Trump's second term. And the MBTA is actually hoping to get $2 billion to fix the Green Line through that program. So how can you as a senator, and how can Congress more broadly, hold the administration accountable to actually following the law and doing what Congress intended?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first step is, of course, winning the election this November. Then the gavels will be in the hands of Democrats, the subpoena power in the hands of the Democrats. The ability to get right down to the heart of the corruption that is rampant inside of this administration. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet of corruption, which characterizes the Trump administration. And we know that the natural gas, the oil industry, they don't like the idea of clean transportation. They don't like the idea of moving to a new system that emphasizes new technologies, the electric vehicle technology, the battery technology. So that's all a part of what we're going to have to be the leaders on as Democrats next year, to rebalance the table, but also to expose how political these grants are.
So what's your take on the House's Build Act, their 5-year proposal for transportation spending reauthorization that likely won't get a floor vote in this Congress? What would the Senate do differently?
Well, for me, I would make sure that there was more funding to guarantee that Amtrak got all that it needed, that we ensured that it had provisions in it that lowered emissions, that made sure that there were lower costs for people using our transportation system, and to make sure it was done safely so that we had lower fatalities, lower injuries as well. So we just have to meet the challenge, meet the moment, meet the time that we're living in right now, and any money must have the values that we care about attached to it. A vision without funding is an hallucination, but a vision without safety and lower emissions attached to the funding is also ultimately an illusion. We have to be absolutely explicit, intentional in any legislation, and that's why I would just start all over again next year and get it right.
The transportation funding bill, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, was supposed to only last 5 years. It needs to be renewed. That's sort of being negotiated right now. I want to talk a little bit about the Amtrak funding in that bill, in that reauthorization bill. So you mentioned before the All Aboard Act that you introduced with $200 billion in funding for rail. Yeah. The House in Congress passed a transportation bill, reauthorization bill, that's sort of their first draft, that wouldn't include any funding for Amtrak passenger rail, so no guaranteed funding for Amtrak, which would effectively be a $66 billion budget cut for Amtrak. How is that negotiation going to play out? I'm assuming it's going to land somewhere in the middle, but is that going to be hashed out in the Commerce Committee, or are you hoping to get the All Aboard Act integrated into the next transportation bill?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, we're going to have to etch a sketch all of the negotiations. We're now negotiating with a MAGA-controlled House and Senate. We're negotiating with a MAGA White House, and we're going to win the House and Senate. We're not passing any bills before the election, so let's just etch a sketch. We win the House and Senate. Let's start all over again.
Yeah. Okay.
In January next year.
Okay. So you're running out the clock right now.
Let's use our power in order to make sure that we get it right, not come hat in hand. Oh, pretty please, allow us to have a little more for Amtrak or a little more for something else. Let's do it right from the get-go. So that would be my objective. It's just to say, we got the power. Let's just start again, and let's get it right.
In last reauthorization, you offered several amendments that ultimately weren't included in the final package, but you still voted for the bill. How did you weigh that decision?
Well, I work as hard as I can to get things right. And I had several things that were included that were good. Obviously, the highway industrial complex still has too much power. But I see each bill as an opportunity to make it a little bit better. Just keep moving in the right direction. But from my perspective, the past is just a memory, and the future is the hard reality for families needing high quality transportation in our country that's safe and it's low cost.
And I think as Congress approaches reauthorization again, how are you kind of thinking about which priorities are red lines, where you're willing to compromise? How are you balancing that?
Well, I have hundreds of laws on the books, and each time as I negotiate, I seek to ensure that people who need the protections the most are included. And if they're not, then I vote no. So, and I make that very clear to people right from the very beginning. We need environmental justice, we need transportation justice in our country now more than ever. And that's the balance that I try to strike. And the more that we're able to include is the more likely I can support something, and the more that those special interests keep pushing back, the past keeps pushing back against the future unfolding, is the more likely I will be voting no.
We've become a region where, with limited exceptions, only the very wealthy can afford to live near T stations, and the working class people who actually rely on the T are being forced to live further and further away. This is often framed as a local zoning issue, but do you have any ideas of how the federal government can begin to address the housing shortage in cities like Boston?
Well, without question, transportation plays a big role in it. And to the extent to which transportation is affordable and accessible, to the extent to which it's free, because transportation is the second largest cost for the average family after housing, then it makes it easier for families to make other decisions with regard to, for example, housing. And the more that we think about making transportation accessible further away, then families are able to locate nearer affordable housing outside of Boston, and then commute into their job and be able to affordably travel and simultaneously have affordable housing, which is more likely to be something that they can take advantage of, even if it's a little further away from downtown Boston.
Thank you, Senator.
Can I say this? One of the things is Bostonians don't think of us Maldonians, right? We're like 14 minutes away. So when they say Boston, we're going, you're including us, right? You're including Somerville, right? You're including Cambridge, you're including Quincy, you're including Chelsea and Revere, you're including all these other surrounding communities. Right. So Boston sometimes,
please hold on or remain
hopefully,
seated
is used as shorthand for a much larger metropolitan area, that it has to be included in a comprehensive transportation plan. And it just can't be Boston proper. It has to be all of the surrounding communities integrated into a comprehensive, thoughtful plan. And we're in Malden, we're heading for Chelsea, and those communities have to be always included as part of any transportation plan.
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
All right. Great.